Crosswind Station smelled like burnt oil and recycled air, same as every other trading hub David Reed had visited in the past 3 years. He walked through the main corridor with his hands in his pockets, watching aliens of a dozen species haggle over prices and cargo manifests. Nobody paid attention to a human anymore. Earth had joined the Galactic Union recently enough that most species still thought of humans as the new kids who didn't know the rules yet. David needed fuel and supplies. His ship, the Longshot, had been running freight between outer colonies for 6 months straight. The pay was decent and nobody asked too many questions about what he carried or where he'd been. That was how David liked it. The docking bay's cantina sat wedged between 2 repair shops. David pushed through the door and found himself in the middle of a situation that looked ready to explode. 2 groups faced each other across the room. On one side stood creatures that looked like 7-foot-tall serpents, their scales catching the dim light in shades of green and gold. On the other side were massive bear-like aliens covered in thick brown fur, each one broad enough to fill a doorway. The serpent in front spoke with a voice that hissed and clicked. "Commander Bronk, your vessels violated the treaty line again. This is the 3rd time this month." The bear creature named Bronk growled low in his chest. "Ambassador Sleeth, your people moved the marker buoys. We were in neutral space, you were not. The markers have been in place for 10 standard years. Your markers, not ours." David tried to edge around them toward the bar. He just wanted something to eat before heading back to his ship. Getting involved in alien politics wasn't on his schedule. One of the bear aliens, younger than Bronk, stepped forward. "Maybe we should move your markers into your throat, Snake." A serpent from Sleeth's group coiled tighter. "Maybe we should see how well bears swim in vacuum." The room went silent. Everyone knew what came next. David had seen enough bar fights across a dozen worlds to recognize the moment before everything went sideways. He should have kept walking. Should have minded his own business. Instead, David stepped between them. "Hey, anyone know where I can get decent food around here?" Every eye in the room turned toward him. The young bear alien blinked down at David like he'd just noticed an insect on his boot. "Human, move." "I'm trying to," David said. "But you're blocking the bar." Sleeth's tongue flicked out, tasting the air. "This does not concern your species, I know. I'm just hungry." David looked at the young bear. "You look hungry too. Fighting on an empty stomach is a bad idea. Makes you slow." The young bear narrowed his eyes. "Are you challenging me?" "No, I'm telling you I've been flying for 6 weeks straight and I really want some food." "If you want to fight, maybe do it outside. Some of us have work tomorrow." Bronk made a sound that might have been a laugh. He put one massive paw on the young bear's shoulder. "Stand down, Garth." Sleeth studied David with unblinking eyes. "You are either very brave or very stupid, human." "Probably both," David admitted. "But I'm also very hungry." The tension broke. The 2 groups separated, moving to opposite sides of the cantina. David finally made it to the bar and ordered something the bartender promised wouldn't kill humans. It arrived looking gray and smelling worse, but David had eaten stranger things. Sleeth slithered over to the bar beside him. Up close, the ambassador's scales had an iridescent quality that shifted colors when he moved. "You diffused that situation cleverly. Do all humans have such diplomatic instincts?" "We have a lot of practice keeping idiots from killing each other," David said around a mouthful of gray mush. "Doesn't always work, I see." Sleeth's tongue flicked again. "Tell me, human, are you available for employment?" David paused. "What kind of employment?" "Simple transport. I need cargo moved from this station to the threshold system. 3 days' journey. The pay is substantial." "How substantial?" Sleeth named a figure that made David stop eating. That was 3 months' worth of his usual rates, which meant it was dangerous, illegal, or both. "What's the cargo?" "Sealed containers. Standard diplomatic materials." "And why do you need me specifically?" "Because you are human. Independent. Not aligned with either the Satha or the Grendel." David looked across the room at Bronk, who was lecturing the young bear in a low growl. "Those are your species? Satha and Grendel?" "Correct. We have been in a territorial dispute for some time. Tensions are high. I need someone neutral to make this delivery." David finished his meal, thinking. The smart move was to say no. Getting involved in alien wars was a fast way to end up dead in space. But that kind of money would let him pay off the Longshot's remaining debt, and maybe even upgrade the engines. "When do you need it delivered?" "The cargo is already loaded on my vessel. I simply need your ship to transport it." We can transfer everything within the hour. And you'll pay half up front? Sleeth's lips pulled back, showing rows of small, sharp teeth. David realized it was a smile. Half now, half on delivery. You are a prudent businessman. I'm a living businessman. There's a difference. They worked out the details. Sleeth transferred the first payment, and David watched his account balance jump higher than it had been in years. He tried not to think about what he might be carrying. Diplomatic materials could mean anything. But Sleeth was an ambassador, and the Galactic Union had rules about these things. Probably. David walked back to the long shot an hour later, his cargo hold now filled with 20 sealed containers. They were the right size and weight for electronic equipment or documents. Nothing obviously illegal. He ran the standard scans and found nothing that would get him arrested at a checkpoint. He told himself this was just another job. Get from point A to point B, collect the money, move on, simple. The Longshot's engines hummed to life. David filed his flight plan with station control and eased away from the dock. Crosswind Station fell away behind him, getting smaller until it was just another point of light among millions. 3 days to threshold. Easy run. David really should have known better. The first day of the journey passed without incident. David spent most of it checking system diagnostics and trying not to think about the cargo in his hold. The Longshot handled well, cutting through empty space toward the contested rim where the threshold system waited. On the second day, curiosity got the better of him. David ran deeper scans on the containers. They were shielded well, but not perfectly. He picked up electronic signatures that suggested data storage devices inside. Not weapons, at least. That was something. He was running the third scan when his proximity alarm went off. 3 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly in his path. They were Grendel vessels, blocky and heavily armored. David's console lit up with warnings as target locks painted his hull. A voice came through his communication system, deep and rough. Unidentified freight vessel. Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. David recognized that voice. Commander Bronk. He killed his main engines and let the Longshot drift. Fighting 3 military ships in a freight hauler was suicide. Besides, he hadn't actually done anything wrong. Probably. The Grendel vessels matched his drift. A boarding tube extended from the largest ship and clamped onto his airlock. David went to meet them, hands visible and empty. Bronk came through first, followed by 4 soldiers. They barely fit in the Longshot's narrow corridors. Bronk had to duck his head to avoid hitting the ceiling. Human David, Bronk said. We meet again. Commander. What can I do for you? You can explain why you are carrying Satha intelligence data through disputed space. David's stomach dropped. I'm carrying diplomatic materials. Ambassador Sleeth hired me for a transport job. Bronk snorted. It was a sound full of contempt. Sleeth hired you because you are ignorant. Those containers hold surveillance data on Grendel military positions. You are helping them prepare for war. I didn't know that. Of course you didn't. The Satha excel at using fools. Bronk moved past David toward the cargo hold. Show me. They walked through the ship together. Bronk's soldiers fanned out, checking every compartment with professional efficiency. In the cargo hold, Bronk examined the containers without touching them. These seals are military grade, he said. Not diplomatic. David felt anger building in his chest. Sleeth had lied to him, used him as a pawn in whatever game the Satha and Grendel were playing. He should have known better. That much money for a simple transport job had been too good to be true. So what happens now? David asked. You take the cargo and I go home? Bronk turned to look at him. The Grendel commander's eyes were dark brown, almost black. I could execute you for espionage. Union law permits it during territorial disputes. I'm not a spy. I'm a freight hauler who got played. Perhaps. Bronk walked around David slowly, studying him. But you are also the human who stopped a fight at Crosswind Station. The one who spoke about fighting on empty stomachs making soldiers slow. That showed wisdom. That showed hunger. Bronk made that snorting sound again, but this time it seemed almost amused. Humans are strange. The Satha think you are easy to manipulate. But I have studied your species since Earth joined the Union. You survived centuries of constant warfare on your own planet. You understand conflict in ways many species do not. David didn't know where this was going. If you've got a point, I'd like to hear it before you decide whether to space me. My point is this. The Satha play games with information and lies. The Grendel values strength and honor. Your species seems to value something else. Something I do not fully understand yet. Bronk moved to the nearest container and placed his paw on it. I could take this cargo and let you go, or I could make you a different offer. I'm listening. Return to Sleeth. Deliver the cargo as planned, but replace the real data with false information we will provide. Tell the Satha nothing of this meeting. David's mind raced. You want me to be a double agent? I want you to be what the Satha already think you are. A useful fool, but working for me instead. And if I say no, then you have chosen a side. The Satha side, and you will face the consequences of that choice. David looked at the containers, then back at Bronk. The smart move was obvious. Do what Bronk wanted, stay alive, get paid by both sides, maybe even make extra money selling information. But something about the whole situation felt wrong. Sleeth had manipulated him. Now Bronk wanted to do the same thing. Both sides thought humans were either stupid or easily controlled. Both sides were using him as a piece in a game he didn't understand. Can I ask you something? David said. Ask. How long have the Satha and Grendel been fighting? Bronk's expression shifted slightly. The territorial dispute has lasted 43 standard years. 43 years. And in all that time, neither side has won? The conflict is complex. It's not that complex, David said. You've got two sides fighting over the same piece of space. Each side is strong enough to keep the other from winning, but not strong enough to win themselves. So you just keep fighting. Forever. The Grendel will never surrender territory that rightfully belongs to us. And the Satha will never stop expanding. I get it. David walked to the cargo hold entrance and leaned against the frame. But here's what I don't get. Why does everyone assume humans are stupid? Bronk tilted his head. Explain. Sleeth hired me because he thought I'd just follow orders. You're giving me an ultimatum because you think I'll do whatever keeps me alive. But neither of you asked what I actually want, which is? David smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. I want to get paid. I want to keep flying. And I really don't like being played for an idiot. He pushed off from the wall and walked past Bronk to one of the containers. He placed his hand on it, mimicking the Grendel commander's earlier gesture. Here's my counteroffer. I'm going to finish this delivery like I agreed, but I'm not carrying fake data for you, and I'm not going to pretend I don't know what's really in these boxes. Instead, I'm going to figure out exactly what's going on with this war of yours. Then I'm going to find a way to make both sides pay me for solving it. Bronk stared at him. For a long moment, the cargo hold was completely silent. Then the commander snorted again, louder this time. You are either very brave or very stupid, human. Yeah, I've heard that before. David met Bronk's eyes without flinching. Here's the thing about humans. We spent thousands of years fighting each other over every stupid reason you can imagine. Religion, resources, territory, insults, you name it. And you know what we learned? What? That there's always a third option. Always a way out that nobody's seeing because they're too busy fighting to look for it. Bronk considered this. Then he gestured to his soldiers. They returned to their ship without a word. The commander turned back to David at the airlock. I will not stop you from delivering your cargo, but if you betray the Grendel human, your species is too young and too weak to protect you from our response. Noted. And David? Bronk paused at the boarding tube. I hope you find your third option, but I do not think you will. The Grendel ships detached and jumped away, leaving the long shot alone again in empty space. David returned to his pilot seat and restarted the engines. His hands were shaking slightly from adrenaline. He had just told a military commander from a species that could crush Earth without trying that he was going to outsmart everyone. That was probably the dumbest thing he'd ever done, but David meant every word. If there was one thing humans were good at, it was finding solutions nobody else saw coming. Threshold system looked like a graveyard. Debris fields floated in orbit around the fourth planet, remnants of battles that had been fought here over the past 4 decades. David guided the long shot through the wreckage carefully, watching his sensors for any sign of active ships. He found plenty. Satha vessels formed a loose perimeter around the inner system. Further out, Grendel warships patrolled in tight formations. Neither side had opened fire yet, but the weapon systems on every ship were hot and ready. David had spent the last day of his journey doing research. The Longshot's computer contained basic information about most Union species. He learned that the Satha were traders and diplomats who had built an empire through negotiation and political manipulation. The Grendel were warriors who valued honor and direct confrontation. Both species were powerful. Both had allies throughout the Union, and both had been locked in this stupid conflict for long enough that younger members of each species had never known peace. David opened communication channels to both fleets simultaneously. "This is Captain David Reed of the Longshot. I'm carrying cargo for Ambassador Sleeth, but I need to arrange a meeting on neutral ground with both the Satha and Grendel commanders present." The response from the Satha fleet came first. Sleeth's voice hissed through the speakers. "Captain Reed, you were instructed to deliver directly to my flagship. Why are you deviating from the plan?" Bronk's voice followed. "Human, what game are you playing?" "No game, I'm done being a chess piece. If you both want what I'm carrying, we talk first, face to face. Otherwise I dump these containers into the nearest sun and everyone goes home with nothing." Several seconds of silence followed. David could imagine both commanders trying to figure out if he was bluffing. He wasn't entirely sure himself. Finally, Sleeth spoke. "There is an abandoned colony on Threshold's second moon. Dome 7 still has atmosphere. We can meet there in 2 hours." "Agreed," Bronk said. "But human, if this is a trap, your death will be slow." "If I wanted either of you dead, I wouldn't need a trap," David lied. 2 hours. Come alone or bring guards, I don't care, but come ready to talk." He closed the channel before either could respond and set course for the moon. Dome 7 had been a mining colony once. Now it was just empty buildings and dusty streets under a transparent dome that had somehow survived whatever disaster had killed this place. David landed the Longshot in what used to be the main plaza. 2 other ships touched down within minutes. Sleeth emerged from a small diplomatic shuttle. Bronk came down in an armored dropship. They met in the center of the plaza, 3 figures standing in the red dust. Overhead, the dome showed a sky full of stars and the orbital debris of an endless war. David spoke first. "Thank you both for coming. You have 2 minutes to explain yourself before I take that cargo by force." Bronk growled. "And before I report you to the Union for breach of contract," Sleeth added. David reached into his jacket and pulled out a data pad. He'd spent hours preparing this. "Before we get to threats, I want to show you something. Information I found while researching your war." He activated the pad. A hologram appeared in the air between them, showing shipping manifests, financial records, and communication logs. "This is the Meridian Consortium. They're a corporate entity that operates throughout Union space. Over the past 40 years, they've sold weapons to both the Sata and the Grendel. They've also bought mining rights in the contested rim at prices well below market value, because nobody else wants to operate in a war zone." Sleeth's eyes narrowed. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm showing you facts." David swiped to the next set of documents. 3 years ago, the Satha and Grendel were close to a peace agreement. Then a Grendel colony was attacked by ships using Satha weapon signatures. The peace talks collapsed. But look at this. He highlighted a section of the report. The attacking ships were bought from Meridian 6 months before the attack. The weapons were modified with Satha technology that Meridian also supplied. Bronk stepped closer to the hologram. "You are saying Meridian attacked our colony to prevent peace?" "I'm saying someone using Meridian ships and modified weapons attacked your colony at a very convenient time. And that same pattern shows up 16 other times in the past 40 years. Every time your species get close to ending this war, something happens to restart it. And Meridian profits every single time." Sleeth coiled tighter, which David had learned meant the ambassador was thinking hard. "This is speculation. It's data. Hard numbers, money trails, shipping manifests." David closed the hologram. "And it's just the surface. If we dig deeper, I guarantee we find more." "Why should we trust you?" Bronk asked. "You carry Satha intelligence data." "Actually, I don't." David pulled out another data pad, this one from his cargo hold. He'd cracked the encryption on one container during his journey. "This isn't intelligence on Grendel positions. It's financial records, payments from Meridian to various Satha officials over the past decade." "Sleeth, did you know your own security chief has been taking bribes?" The ambassador's scales rippled, changing from green to a darker shade. "That is classified information, which you were going to use for what? Blackmail? Political leverage?" David turned to Bronk. "And before you get too smug, Meridian has been paying off Grendel officers too. 3 of your supply depot commanders are on their payroll." Both aliens stared at him. David felt sweat running down his back under his jacket. This was the moment. Either they listened or they killed him. "Here's what I think," he continued. "I think you're both being played. Meridian wants this war to continue because they make money from it, so they bribe officials on both sides. They arrange incidents that look like attacks. They sell weapons to everyone. And you two keep fighting because you're so focused on each other that you never looked for the third party pulling strings. Sleeth hissed softly. Even if this is true, what do you propose we do? We expose them. Both of you work together just this once to take down Meridian. Then we establish a real buffer zone in the contested rim. Neutral territory that neither the Satha nor the Grendel control. Patrol it jointly. Make it too expensive for anyone to profit from conflict. You want us to trust each other, Bronk said flatly. After 40 years of war, I want you to trust math. Follow the money. See where it leads. David smiled, though his heart was pounding. And if you can't trust each other, trust that I don't want to die in your stupid war. I've got cargo runs to make and debts to pay. This conflict is bad for business. My business. Sleeth and Bronk looked at each other over David's head. Some unspoken communication passed between them. David had no idea what it meant. Finally, Sleeth spoke. Human, you are either the cleverest being I have ever met, or you are leading us into a trap that will doom your entire species. Bronk snorted. For once, Snake, we agree. David kept smiling even though his mouth was dry. There's an old saying on Earth. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Meridian has shown you exactly who they are. The question is whether you'll believe the evidence or keep believing they're your friends. More silence. David could hear his own heartbeat. Then Bronk extended one massive paw toward Sleeth. The Grendel commander's voice was rough. One operation. Together. If the human is correct, we expose Meridian. If he is wrong, we expose him. Sleeth studied the offered paw for several seconds. Then the Satha ambassador wrapped his tail around Bronk's wrist in what David guessed was their equivalent of a handshake. Agreed. But human, if you are manipulating us, I will personally ensure that humanity never joins another trade consortium. And the Grendel will hunt every human ship in this sector, Bronk added. David's smile widened into a genuine grin. Noted, now let's go ruin Meridian's day. I've got coordinates for their main logistics hub. It's 3 days from here, completely undefended because they think nobody knows about it. Both aliens stared at him again. You already found their base? Sleeth asked. I've had a lot of free time during this trip, and humans are really good at following money trails. We've had thousands of years of practice tracking down corrupt politicians and war profiteers. Bronk made that snorting sound. But this time David thought it might actually be laughter. They had 3 days to plan. Deep space felt different when you were flying toward a target instead of away from trouble. David adjusted the Longshot's course slightly, keeping formation with the Satha stealth ship on his port side and the Grendel fighter on his starboard. 3 ships, 3 species, one very dangerous plan. Senna rode in the Longshot's co-pilot seat. The Satha intelligence operative was smaller than Ambassador Sleeth, with darker scales that helped her blend into shadows. She'd barely spoken since, coming aboard instead spending most of her time studying the data David had collected on Meridian. Garth was the Grendel warrior David had seen at Crosswind Station, the young one who'd almost started a bar fight. He'd insisted on joining the mission after Bronk explained what they were doing. Now he was checking weapons in the cargo hold, making sure everything was ready for whatever they found at the Meridian hub. We drop out of faster-than-light travel in 10 minutes, David announced. Everyone ready? Weapons are prepared, Garth called from below. Senna's tongue flicked out. I have bypassed their outer security protocols. We should be able to approach without triggering alarms. Should? Nothing is certain with security systems, but I am very good at what I do. David hoped she was right. The Meridian Logistics Hub was supposed to be a secret facility where they coordinated weapons shipments and managed their bribed officials. If everything David had learned was correct, the hub would contain records of every transaction Meridian had made in the contested rim, evidence that could destroy the consortium's operations completely. Of course, if David was wrong, they were about to attack a legitimate business facility and start an incident that could get Earth kicked out of the Galactic Union. No pressure. The Longshot shuddered as it dropped back into normal space. Ahead of them, the Meridian hub appeared. It was smaller than David expected, just a cluster of modules connected by docking tubes, floating in empty space far from any settled system. Perfect location for something you wanted to keep hidden. Senna worked her console, sending signals that convinced the hub's automated systems they were expected supply ships. The outer docks opened. David flew the long shot in slowly, flanked by their 2 escort vessels. "So far, so good," he muttered. They docked without incident. David, Senna, and Garth met at the airlock. The Grendel warrior had to crouch to fit through the long shot's doors, and he carried enough weapons to fight a small war. Senna wore a device on her wrist that she claimed would hack any security system they encountered. David just had a pistol and hoped that his plan would work. The hub's interior was clean and efficient. Automated systems handled most of the work, with only a few organic beings visible through windows of offices they passed. Senna led them through corridors with confidence, following security blind spots she'd mapped from her earlier hacking. They reached the central data core without anyone stopping them. Senna attached her device to the access panel and started downloading files. David kept watch on one end of the corridor while Garth watched the other. "How long?" David whispered. "The system contains more data than I expected. 5 minutes. They didn't have 5 minutes. An alarm began wailing through the station. Red lights flashed in the corridor. "They detected us," Senna hissed. "Can you get the data anyway?" "If we have time," Garth growled from his position. "We have company." Security drones floated into the corridor from both directions. They were armed with energy weapons that could cut through ship hulls. David fired his pistol at the nearest one, but the shot bounced off its shields. Garth charged forward with a roar that made the corridor ring. He grabbed one drone and crushed it with his bare paws. Then he threw the wreckage at another drone, knocking it out of the air. David had heard that Grendel were strong, but seeing it in person was something else. More drones appeared. Senna kept working at the console while David and Garth fought to keep them back. Energy bolts filled the air, scorching the walls. David dove behind a doorway as a shot passed close enough to singe his hair. 4 minutes, Senna called out. A door opened ahead of them. An insectoid alien emerged, its carapace gleaming black and gold. It wore clothes that suggested high rank, and it carried no weapons. It didn't need to. Behind it came a dozen more security drones. "You are trespassing on Meridian property," the insectoid said. Its voice clicked and buzzed. "Surrender and you will be detained. Resist and you will be eliminated." David recognized the species from his research. This was Chiton, the CEO who ran Meridian's operations in this sector. He aimed his pistol at the CEO's head. "Chiton, I presume. We're here for your records, the ones that prove you've been manipulating the Satha and Grendel into fighting each other." Chiton's mandibles clicked together in what might have been laughter. "Manipulating? Such a crude word. We provide services. Both sides purchase those services willingly. You arranged attacks, bribed officials, sold weapons to both sides. We fulfilled demand. The Satha and Grendel want to fight. We simply made it easier and more profitable for everyone involved." Chiton tilted its head. "Including ourselves, naturally," Garth snarled. "You killed innocents for profit. I provided employment for millions and maintained economic stability in 3 sectors." Chiton gestured with one limb. "But this conversation is pointless. You cannot escape this station alive. However, I am willing to make an offer." David didn't lower his weapon. "What kind of offer?" "You are human. Your species is new to the Union. You have no stake in the Satha-Grendel conflict." Chiton moved closer, its multiple legs clicking on the floor. "I will pay you 5 million credits to walk away. Take your ship. Leave the Satha and the Grendel here. Return to Earth and live in comfort." 5 million credits. That was more money than David would see in 10 lifetimes of freight hauling. He could buy a fleet of ships. Retire young. Never worry about debt or danger again. 3 minutes, Senna called. Chiton continued. "Your companions are fanatics fighting for species that do not care about them. But you are a businessman. You understand profit. You understand survival. Take the money. Live." David thought about it. Really thought about it. The smart choice was obvious. 5 million credits versus dying in a corporate black site that nobody knew existed. Then he remembered Sleeth calling him a useful fool, Bronk threatening his entire species. both of them assuming humans were either stupid or easily controlled. He smiled. You know what the problem with your offer is? Please, enlighten me. You think I'm doing this for money. But I'm not. David's smile widened. I'm doing this because both the Satha and the Grendel pissed me off. They treated humans like we don't matter, like we're just tools to be used. And now you're doing the same thing. Chiton's mandibles twitched. You would rather die than accept payment? I'd rather show you what happens when you underestimate humans. David glanced back at Senna. How much longer? 2 minutes. But they will kill us before then. David looked at the drones, at Chiton, at the impossible odds. Then he did something that confused every alien in the corridor. He laughed. Here's what you don't understand about my species. We're not the strongest. We're not the smartest. We don't have the best technology or the most ships. He kept his pistol trained on Chiton. But we are absolutely the best at being stubborn, at refusing to quit even when quitting makes sense, at finding ways to win that nobody else even considers. Chiton clicked its mandibles rapidly. You are stalling. Yeah, I am. But I'm also telling you the truth. David's expression hardened. You wanted to profit from war? Let me show you what war with humans actually looks like. He fired his pistol directly at Chiton's face. The shot didn't kill Chiton. The insectoid's personal shield flared, absorbing the energy. But the CEO stumbled backward in surprise, and that moment of confusion was all David needed. Garth, get Senna. We're leaving now. The Grendel warrior grabbed Senna with one arm, pulling her away from the console. She clutched her device, which was still blinking as it downloaded data. 60 seconds more, she protested. Don't have it, David shouted. He fired at the nearest drones, not trying to destroy them but to create chaos. Garth charged through the others, using his massive body as a battering ram. They ran back the way they'd come, alarms screaming behind them. More drones appeared in every corridor. David realized with sick certainty that they weren't going to make it to the ships. Chiton had too many defenses, too many automated systems. Then Garth skidded to a stop at an intersection. He pointed to a maintenance shaft. There. They climbed into the cramped space, Garth barely fitting through the opening. The shaft led through the station's guts, past pipes and cables and machinery. David could hear drones searching the corridors they'd just left. Senna's device beeped. Download complete. I have everything. Great. Now we just need to survive long enough to use it, David muttered. They emerged in a docking bay, but not the one where they'd left their ships. This bay held cargo vessels being loaded by automated systems, and more importantly, it held a communications array. David ran to the nearest terminal. He jacked Senna's device into it and started transmitting. Raw data flooded out onto every frequency he could access. Financial records, bribery evidence, communication logs, everything Meridian had done for 40 years broadcast to anyone listening. What are you doing? Senna asked. Making sure this data gets out even if we don't. David's fingers flew across the controls. He'd spent years as a freight hauler learning how to use Union communication systems. Now he used every trick he knew to punch the signal through to the wider galaxy. Alarms intensified. The bay doors began to close, trying to trap them inside. Garth grabbed a cargo loader and threw it at the door mechanism, jamming it half open. Then Chiton's voice came through every speaker in the bay. You fool. You have just declared war on Meridian. We will destroy you. We will destroy your companions. We will destroy your entire species. David kept transmitting. The data was spreading now, bouncing through relay stations across multiple systems. Within hours, every major government in the Union would have copies. Meridian couldn't stop it anymore. You threatened my species, David said into the terminal. Big mistake. See, humans have this thing about threats. We tend to escalate. You have nothing to escalate with, human. You are 3 beings in a station full of my security forces. I'm one human with information and a really bad attitude. David finished the transmission and pulled out Senna's device. But you're right. I do need to escalate. He accessed the Longshot systems remotely. His ship was still docked in the other bay, but he could control it from here. He activated the self-destruct sequence, then set a timer for 10 minutes. Senna's eyes widened. You are destroying your own vessel? I'm making a point. David looked at the communication terminal. Chiton, you wanted profit from war? Here's what war with humans costs. I just sent all your dirty secrets to every government in the Union. Your bribes. Your false flag attacks. Your weapon sales. Everything. You're finished. You are bluffing. Check your own communication logs. The data's already gone. It's over. Several seconds of silence followed. Then Chiton spoke again, and this time there was something different in its voice. Something that might have been fear. You have made an enemy of the most powerful corporation in this sector. No, David said. I've made you an enemy of everyone you've been manipulating. The Satha and Grendel just got proof that you've been playing them against each other. How long do you think before they decide to combine forces and come after you? As if on cue, new ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel outside the station. David recognized their signatures immediately. Satha and Grendel warships arriving together. They'd been waiting just outside the system for David's signal. Chiton must have seen them too. This is a violation of Union law. You cannot attack a corporate facility without cause. Ambassador Sleeth's voice came through the communication channel. We have all the cause we need now, thanks to the human. Meridian Consortium, you are under arrest for war crimes, conspiracy, and violation of the Union Charter. Commander Bronk added his own message. Surrender your facility immediately or be destroyed. David smiled at the communication terminal. Looks like you're surrounded, Chiton. Now here's my offer. Let us leave peacefully, and you get to surrender to the authorities. Fight, and I guarantee these two fleets will turn this station into scrap metal. They've got 40 years of anger to work through, and you just became their favorite target. More silence. David could almost hear Chiton calculating odds, weighing options. Finally, the CEO spoke. You have won today, human. But Meridian is vast. We have resources across 100 systems. We will recover from this. Maybe. But not in the contested rim, not here. David disconnected from the terminal. Come on. We need to get to the ships before my self-destruct timer runs out. They ran through corridors that were now empty of security drones. Chiton had apparently ordered a general stand-down. They reached the original docking bay and found their ships intact. David was relieved to see the long shot still in one piece. He canceled the self-destruct with 3 minutes to spare. He'd never actually planned to blow up his ship, but Chiton didn't need to know that. They launched from the hub and joined the fleet outside. David opened a channel to both command ships. Ambassador Sleeth, Commander Bronk, the data has been transmitted throughout Union space. Every major government should have copies by now. Meridian's operations in the contested rim are finished. Sleeth's hologram appeared on his screen, alongside Bronk's. The Satha ambassador's scales had shifted to a lighter, almost pleased color. The human has done well, better than I expected, Bronk snorted. The human has done what both our species should have done years ago. He showed us we were being manipulated. So what happens now? David asked. The two commanders looked at each other. Some silent communication passed between them again. Then Sleeth spoke. Now we establish the buffer zone you suggested. Neutral territory in the contested rim. Jointly patrolled by both Satha and Grendel forces until a permanent peace can be negotiated. And Meridian? David asked. The Union will investigate every facility they operate. Many will be shut down. Chiton and its board members will face trial. Bronk's expression was grim. It will take time, but justice will be served. David leaned back in his pilot seat, suddenly exhausted. He'd spent 3 days running on adrenaline and desperation. Now that it was over, the reality of what he'd done was sinking in. He'd ended a war, or at least started the process of ending it. Him. A freight hauler from Earth who just wanted to make some money. There is one more thing, Sleeth said. The Union Council wishes to speak with you, Captain Reed. They are very interested in humanity's approach to conflict resolution. Great. More politicians. David rubbed his eyes. Can it wait? I've got a ship that needs repairs and about 10 years of sleep to catch up on. Bronk made that snorting sound that David now recognized as laughter. Rest first, human. You have earned it. But know this. The Grendel consider you a friend. You may travel through our territory freely, and any Grendel ship will offer you aid if needed. The Satha also acknowledge a debt, Sleeth added. You have proven that humans are not the simple tools we assumed them to be. David smiled, though he was too tired for it to reach his eyes. We're not tools at all. We're humans, and we're really good at two things, making friends and making problems for people who deserve them. He closed the channel and set course back toward civilized space. Senna and Garth had returned to their own ships, but both sent messages thanking him for the mission. Apparently saving the galaxy made you popular. David would worry about fame later. Right now, he just wanted to get home. 6 months after the Meridian incident, David found himself in a place he'd never expected to be. The Galactic Union Council chambers were enormous. A circular room with seats for representatives from 300 species. Every seat was occupied. All of them were looking at him. David stood in the center of the room where defendants and witnesses gave testimony. He'd traded his usual cargo hauler clothes for something approaching formal wear, though he still felt underdressed compared to the elaborate outfits and natural displays around him. The council speaker, a floating jellyfish-like being named Loomis, addressed him in a voice that echoed through the chamber. Captain David Reed of Earth, you stand before this council not as an accused, but as a witness to events that have reshaped political dynamics in the contested rim. We would hear your account of what occurred. David had prepared a speech, something diplomatic and careful, but standing here looking at hundreds of alien faces, he decided to tell the truth instead. 6 months ago, I took a transport job because the pay was good. I didn't know I was being used as a pawn in a war. I didn't know that war had been artificially extended by a corporation that profited from it. I was just a guy trying to make a living. He paused. But when I figured out what was happening, I got angry. Because nobody likes being played for a fool, and humans especially don't like being treated like we don't matter. Loomis pulsed with different colors. And so you took it upon yourself to investigate Meridian, expose their operations, and convince 2 hostile species to cooperate. This was beyond your authority. I didn't have authority. I just had information and a working brain. David gestured around the chamber, and honestly, I'm not sorry. Meridian was committing war crimes. The Sada and Grendel were being manipulated into killing each other. If I'd gone through official channels, it would have taken years. More people would have died. The human speaks truth, Ambassador Sleeth said from his seat in the Satha section. The ambassador had become something close to a friend over the past months. His actions, while unorthodox, achieved what decades of diplomatic efforts could not. Commander Bronx stood in the Grendel section. The human showed courage and wisdom. The Grendel honor this. We support his testimony. Loomis pulsed again. The council has reviewed all evidence. Meridian's operations in the contested rim have been dismantled. Chiton and 17 board members await trial for war crimes. The Satha and Grendel have established a joint commission to govern the disputed territories. The speaker floated closer to David. These are significant achievements. The council wishes to offer you a position as an official mediator for interspecies conflicts. David had expected this. The offer had come informally several times over the past months. Thank you, but no. I'm not a diplomat. I'm a freight hauler who got lucky. You undersell your abilities. Maybe, but I like my independence. I like being able to help when I choose to, not because it's my job. David met Loomis's alien gaze without flinching. However, I'm willing to work as a consultant. If you've got species fighting and you can't figure out why, call me. I'll look at it and tell you what I think. And your fee for such consultation depends on the situation. But I'm not cheap. Several representatives around the chamber made sounds that David had learned were laughter. Apparently, blunt negotiation was rare in union politics. Loomis considered this. The council accepts your terms. You will be granted consultant status with full diplomatic immunity when working on approved cases. The speaker paused. But be warned, Captain Reed. There are many species who resent humanity's rapid rise in union standing. Your success has made enemies as well as friends. I'll take my chances. The council session ended shortly after. David left the chambers and found Senna and Garth waiting outside. The Satha operative had officially left her intelligence service to work as an independent contractor. Garth had done the same with the Grendel military. They'd both asked to join David's crew. How did it go? Senna asked. They offered me a job. I turned it down but agreed to consult. David headed toward the exit. And they warned me I've made enemies. Garth snorted. You ended a 40-year war and destroyed a major corporation. Of course you made enemies. Fair point. They took a transport back to the docking level where the longshot waited. David had used some of his payment from the Satha and Grendel to upgrade the ship. New engines, better shields, improved living quarters. It was still a freight hauler at heart, but now it was a freight hauler that could defend itself. Back aboard, David checked his messages. There were dozens of them. Contract offers from various species. Interview requests from union media. Even a few threats from Meridian sympathizers. He deleted most of them. One message caught his attention. It was from a species he'd never heard of, the Kelrics. They were having a territorial dispute with another species called the Torvan. The message was desperate, claiming that a war was about to start and they needed help. David pulled up information on both species. The Kelrics were aquatic, living in ocean worlds. The Torvan were desert dwellers who lived on dry planets. They were fighting over a system that had both types of worlds, which seemed stupid. Why fight over planets you couldn't use? He dug deeper into the data. There was a third planet in the disputed system. Not ocean, not desert, something in between. Habitable for both species. David smiled. There was always a third option if you looked hard enough. Senna, Garth, come look at this. They gathered around his console. David showed them the data on the Kelrics and Torvan. This looks like another artificial conflict, Senna observed. Someone is likely profiting from their dispute. Yeah, that's what I thought too. David started plotting a course. Want to go poke around and see what we find? Garth checked his weapons. Will there be fighting? Probably. Good. Senna's scales shifted to an amused color. You realize we are about to insert ourselves into another conflict without authorization. It's kind of becoming our thing, David said. He activated the engines. Besides, somebody has to do it. The Union is too slow and people are dying while politicians talk. They launched from the station and jumped to faster-than-light travel. The Kelric system was 3 days away. David spent the journey researching both species, looking for patterns, following money trails. It was detective work more than anything else, finding the truth hidden under layers of propaganda and manipulation. He found it on the second day. A mining company had been extracting rare minerals from asteroids in the disputed system. They'd been paying both the Kelrics and Torvan to maintain the conflict, keeping the system too dangerous for other companies to operate in. The pattern was familiar. Another corporation profiting from war. Different players, same game. David prepared a presentation. He contacted both the Kelrics and Torvan governments requesting a meeting. Both agreed, though neither seemed happy about it. In his quarters, David looked at himself in the mirror. 6 months ago, he'd been a nobody freight hauler trying to pay off ship debts. Now he was flying toward another potential war with a SATA intelligence operative and a Grendel warrior as his crew. His reflection smiled back at him. This wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was the life he'd chosen. The next morning, Senna found him reviewing the data again. She coiled beside his console, watching the information scroll past. Do you think we can stop this war too? She asked. Probably. The pattern is obvious once you know what to look for. David closed the files. The real question is what comes after. How do we stop this from happening again? Because there are thousands of systems out there, and only 3 of us. Humanity could provide more mediators. Maybe, but humans are still new to the Union. We don't have the reputation yet. David leaned back in his chair. We need to change how the Union handles conflicts. Make it harder for corporations to profit from war. Make it easier to spot manipulation. That is a significant goal. Yeah, but someone needs to try. David stood and stretched. First, though, we stopped the Kelrics and Torvan from killing each other. One problem at a time. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the disputed system. David could already see both fleets positioning for battle. Kelric ships moved through space like schools of fish, all curves and flowing motion. Torvan vessels were angular and aggressive, built for direct confrontation. Different species, different styles, same stupid willingness to fight over territory. David opened channels to both fleets. This is Captain David Reed, independent mediator. I have information both sides need to hear. Requesting permission to approach. A Kelric's voice responded, high-pitched and rapid. Human mediator? We have heard of you. You ended the Grendel War. A Torvan voice followed, deeper and slower. If the human can prevent bloodshed, we will listen. David smiled as he guided the long shot between the 2 fleets. Great. Because I've got evidence that someone's been playing you against each other, and I think you're going to want to see it. Senna activated the communication systems, preparing to transmit the evidence. Garth checked weapons in case things went badly. And David did what he was apparently good at now. He found the third option that nobody else was looking for, and he made both sides see it. It was going to be a long day, but that was fine. David had gotten used to long days. Behind them, the Longshot's engines hummed steadily. carrying them toward another impossible situation that somehow needed solving. And somewhere in the galaxy, other conflicts were brewing, other wars waiting to start, other corporations looking to profit from death. David would find them eventually. That was the job now. Not freight hauling, problem solving. He was a human in a galaxy full of aliens who were just learning what that meant. It meant never accepting that war was inevitable. It meant finding solutions nobody else saw. It meant being stubborn, creative, and just crazy enough to believe one person could make a difference. The Kelrix and Torvin fleets held their positions, waiting to hear what the human had to say. David got to work.